You ever catch yourself whispering around your Alexa? Like you're in your own kitchen, but suddenly you're careful about what you say because that little cylinder is sitting right there on the counter? Everyone says smart speakers only listen when you say the wake word. But here's what nobody tells you about what's actually happening in your home right now. That device isn't just waiting patiently for you to say, "Hey Google" or "Alexa." It's listening to everything. Every conversation, every argument. Every time you sing off key in the shower. And here's the thing that might shock you. It's not a glitch. It's exactly how these things are designed to work. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand exactly what your smart speaker hears, where those recordings go, and why that little device knows more about your life than your best friend does. And once you see how this actually works, you can't unsee it. Picture this scenario. You're sitting at your dining table with your family. Maybe it's a Tuesday night. You're talking about maybe taking a trip to Florida over spring break. Nobody said, "Hey Alexa." Nobody asked the speaker anything. But 2 days later, you're scrolling Instagram and boom, ads for Orlando hotels, ads for Disney World tickets, ads for rental cars in Tampa. Coincidence? That's what you tell yourself. But here's what's really happening. That speaker heard Florida and spring break and trip. It logged those words. It connected them to your account, and now the algorithm knows you're in the market for vacation planning. Think about it this way. You invited this device into your home because it's convenient. You can ask about the weather without grabbing your phone. You can set timers while your hands are covered in cookie dough. You can play Spotify without touching anything. It makes life easier, right? But here's the gap between what you think is happening and what's actually true. You think the speaker is off until you activate it. You think your conversations are private. You think nobody's listening unless you ask a question. That's not how any of this works. What really happens is this. The microphone is always on. Always. It has to be, because otherwise, how would it know you said the wake word? So it's listening to every single sound in your house, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's processing everything you say, waiting for that magic phrase that tells it to pay closer attention. And this matters because you're not just talking to a machine anymore. You're creating a permanent record of your private life. Every medical problem you mention, every financial stress you discuss, every relationship argument that happens in earshot. It's all potentially being captured and stored on servers you'll never see. This isn't just about targeted ads. It's about who has access to the most intimate details of your life. And most people have no idea how deep this actually goes. So let's talk about what I call the always-on illusion. This is the gap between what these companies tell you and what's technically happening. Amazon says Alexa isn't recording until it hears the wake word. Google says the same thing about Google Home. Apple says Siri respects your privacy. And technically, they're not lying, but they're not telling you the whole truth either. Here's how it actually works. Your smart speaker has a tiny amount of computing power built right into the device. This local processor is constantly listening to everything around it. It's analyzing every sound, every word, every noise. It's comparing what it hears to a stored pattern of the wake word. Think of it like this. Imagine you're at a crowded party and you're not really paying attention to any specific conversation. But the second someone says your name, you snap to attention. Your brain was technically hearing everything the whole time, it just wasn't processing it consciously until it heard something important. That's exactly how your speaker works. The device is hearing everything. It's just not sending everything to the cloud for full processing. But here's the sneaky part. It's still hearing it. Those sounds are still being converted to data. They're still being analyzed locally. And the decision about what counts as a wake word, that's more flexible than you think. This matters because the line between just listening and actually recording is way thinner than most people realize. When you understand that the device is processing every sound you make, even if it's not saving everything, it changes how you feel about having it in your bedroom, or your kitchen, or anywhere near your private conversations. Think about Jessica. She's got an Alexa in her living room and one in her bedroom. She loves the convenience. She asks about weather, plays music, sets alarms. Life is easier. But here's what Jessica doesn't realize. Last month, she was on the phone with her mom talking about some health concerns, private medical stuff. She never said Alexa. She never activated the device. But 3 days later, she started seeing ads for the exact medication she'd mentioned. Wild, right? Your brain does this thing where it treats inanimate objects differently from people. Back when we evolved as humans, if something wasn't alive, it wasn't a threat to your secrets. You could talk freely around rocks and trees, but we're living in a world where the objects in our homes have ears, and our brains haven't caught up to that reality yet. But here's where it gets interesting. There's another pattern that makes this even more complicated. I call it the ghost activation problem. This is when your speaker thinks it heard the wake word, even though you never said it. These devices are trained to recognize patterns. Alexa has a specific sound pattern. Hey Google has its own rhythm. Hey Siri has a particular cadence. But human speech is messy. We slur words together. We have different accents. Background noise creates false patterns, and sometimes the speaker just gets it wrong. Research shows that Alexa activates accidentally about once every 90 minutes of conversation. That means if you're home for 8 hours, it's probably waking up at least 5 times without you noticing. Each time it does that, it's recording. It's sending that audio to Amazon's servers. It's creating a file with your voice saying whatever you happen to be saying at that moment. Think about what you talk about in 90-minute stretches. You might complain about your boss, discuss your finances, talk about relationship problems, share medical information, argue with your partner. And if the speaker ghost activates during any of those moments, that conversation is now sitting on a server somewhere. Here's what makes this even more surprising. You can actually go look at these recordings. Amazon lets you access your Alexa voice history. Google lets you see what Google Home has captured. And when people actually go check, they're shocked by how many recordings exist of conversations they never intended to have with their speaker. This matters because you've been acting like your home is private. You've been speaking freely, thinking you're only being recorded when you deliberately activate the device. But the reality is, you've been recorded dozens, maybe hundreds of times, completely by accident. And once that audio is on Amazon servers or Google servers, you don't control it anymore. Mike found this out the hard way. He went into his Alexa app one day, just curious about what was stored. He found 47 recordings from the past month. He'd only deliberately used Alexa maybe 10 times. The other 37 times, ghost activations, including one particularly awkward recording of an argument with his girlfriend that he definitely didn't want Amazon to have. Your brain assumes that if you didn't intend something to happen, it didn't happen. That's great for reducing anxiety in daily life. But when you're dealing with devices that make their own decisions about when to record, your intentions don't matter. The device doesn't care what you meant to do. It only cares about what patterns it thinks it recognized. Now, this connects to something even deeper. Let's talk about what I call the human eavesdropper reality. Because here's what most people don't know. Real humans listen to your recordings. Not algorithms, not AI, actual people with headphones sitting in offices playing back what you said in your living room. Amazon, Google, and Apple all contract with third-party companies to have humans review voice recordings. They say it's to improve accuracy, to help the AI understand different accents and speech patterns, to make the product better. And sure, that's part of it. But here's what they don't advertise. These human reviewers hear everything. The wake word, the question you asked, and sometimes those ghost activations that captured way more than you wanted to share. Bloomberg reported that Amazon employs thousands of people around the world whose entire job is listening to Alexa recordings. They hear people in their most private moments, showering, fighting, having intimate conversations, discussing illegal activities, talking about medical problems. All of it gets reviewed by someone making $15 an hour in Romania or India or Texas. Think of it like this. You know how you act differently when you know someone's watching? Like how you sit up straighter when your boss walks by, or how you clean your apartment before guests come over? We moderate our behavior based on who we think is observing us. But with smart speakers, you're being observed without knowing it. And that changes everything about whether your home is actually private. This matters because privacy isn't just about what information exists, it's about who has access to it. And when you understand that strangers are literally listening to recordings from your bedroom, it hits different than thinking it's just an algorithm processing data. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to admit. These devices aren't designed for your privacy. They're designed for data collection. The convenience is real, that's not fake. But the convenience is the product they sell you, so you'll accept the real product, which is turning your home into a data harvesting operation. What's actually happening is this. These companies are in an arms race to understand human behavior as deeply as possible. The more they know about what you talk about, what you care about, what you're worried about, what you're planning, the more valuable their advertising platform becomes. Your conversations aren't the product. You're not even the customer. You're the data source. The advertisers are the customers. This isn't about Amazon or Google being evil. It's about business models. When a company offers you a product for $89 that probably costs $300 to manufacture and support, you have to ask how they're making money. The answer is always the same. Your data is worth more than the hardware. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Every time you talk freely around your speaker, you're making a choice. Maybe it's a choice you're comfortable with. Maybe you don't care if Amazon knows about your vacation plans or your grocery shopping habits. But it should be a conscious choice, not something that happens by default because you didn't understand how the technology actually works. This is why the delete your recordings advice you see online misses the point. Sure, you can go into your settings and delete your voice history, but that's like cleaning up the crime scene after the crime already happened. The data's already been processed. The insights have already been extracted. Your profile has already been updated. Deleting the audio file doesn't delete what they learned about you from it. Let me tell you about two different people. There's Rachel. Rachel bought an Alexa 2 years ago. She uses it constantly. Music, timers, shopping lists, weather updates, random questions. She's never thought about privacy settings. She assumes the device is safe because Amazon is a legitimate company. She talks freely around it about everything: work, stress, relationship problems, financial worries, health concerns. Rachel's home is basically a surveillance operation, and she has no idea. Her Alexa has hundreds of recordings stored. Multiple human reviewers have heard her most private conversations during ghost activations. Her advertising profile is incredibly detailed, and she's starting to notice something creepy. The ads she sees are almost too accurate, like they know what she's thinking before she even searches for it. But here's what Rachel doesn't understand yet. She thinks the speaker is just a convenient tool. She hasn't connected the dots between the device sitting in her kitchen and the fact that targeted ads seem to follow her everywhere. She feels vaguely uncomfortable but can't quite pinpoint why. Now compare that to David. David also bought a smart speaker, but David actually read the privacy policy. He went into the settings immediately. He turned off the option that allows human review of his recordings. He set the device to automatically delete recordings after 3 months. He never put a speaker in his bedroom or bathroom, and he's careful about what he discusses when the speaker is in earshot. David still gets the convenience. He can still play music and check the weather and set timers, but he's made conscious decisions about what data he's willing to share. When he has a sensitive conversation, he either moves to a different room or just doesn't care if it's recorded because he already decided the trade-off was worth it. Notice how both people own the same device, same model, same company, same technology, but their privacy outcomes are completely different. That's because David understood something crucial. These devices don't have default privacy. They have default surveillance. Privacy is something you have to configure intentionally. Here's what most people don't realize. You're not powerless here. The choice isn't between have a smart speaker or live in a cabin off the grid with no technology. The choice is between understanding what you're agreeing to versus sleepwalking into surveillance. It's not actually about whether smart speakers are bad. They're not bad. They're incredibly useful technology that millions of people love. But it is about whether you understand what you're trading for, that convenience. It's about whether the privacy settings you have right now match what you'd actually want if you knew what was happening. The people who navigate this successfully don't have special willpower. They don't have some paranoid distrust of technology. They just understand one simple pattern. When tech is free or cheap, you're paying with data. and they've decided what data they're comfortable sharing. So here's what we've uncovered. Your smart speaker is always listening because it has to be. That's how wake words work. It activates by accident, way more than you realize, creating recordings you never intended. Real humans review those recordings, not just algorithms. And the entire business model depends on collecting as much information about your behavior as possible. Remember the always-on illusion? That gap between the device is off and the device is hearing everything? Plus the ghost activation problem where accidental recordings capture your private moments, and the human eavesdropper reality where actual people review what you said. This all connects to the fundamental truth that convenience and privacy are in tension with each other. Not impossible to balance, but definitely in tension. The question isn't whether you should throw your Alexa in the trash. That's not what this is about. The question is whether you're making informed choices about what happens in your home, because now you know what those devices actually do. You can't unknow it. Every conversation you have in front of your speaker from now on carries a different weight because you understand what's really happening. You have options. You can turn off human review in your settings. You can set recordings to auto-delete. You can move speakers out of private rooms. You can check your voice history and delete what you're uncomfortable with, or you can decide the convenience is worth the surveillance and just accept it consciously. All of those are valid choices as long as they're informed choices. But here's the thing that changes everything. Privacy isn't dead. Privacy is just harder. It requires conscious decisions instead of default assumptions. It requires understanding the technology you invite into your home, and it requires accepting that the little cylinder on your counter isn't a neutral object, it's a listening device connected to one of the largest tech companies in the world. So next time you're sitting in your living room having a conversation you wouldn't want strangers to hear, take a look at that smart speaker. Ask yourself if you'd have this same conversation if someone from Amazon was sitting on your couch with a notebook. Because in a very real sense, they basically are. That little device is just the intermediary. The real question is whether you're okay with that. And now, at least you know enough to decide.